Now what we're going to do is talk about chapter 2, which talks about just making choices in the world of scarcity. Really what we're doing here is talking about marginal analysis, so just decision making in terms of how much stuff you should buy. And then we'll also talk about the production possibilities frontier. So according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, a bachelor's degree boosts your earning by 67% over what workers who had only gotten a high school diploma. Also, a master's degree yields average earnings that are nearly double of those with just a high school diploma as well. So, while just over 90% of the population age 25 or over has a high school diploma, only 36% of those have a bachelor's and only 13.5% have a master's degree. So, what's interesting here is that we can see from the evidence that having the higher degrees does lead on average to higher salaries. But why aren't more people pursuing them? Okay, so when we come back to economics and we're trying to think about, doing the thing that makes us the best off or the most happy, we can see right here that having more education could lead to more happiness, and with a higher income, maybe you're going to be more well off, right? But why aren't people more pursuing them? Okay, so it could be a lot of decisions. It could be familiar decisions. Maybe there's something that you got to handle right now that you can't go to school, right? Maybe you have to work right now instead of going to school. That's a big one. Okay, so we live in a world of scarcity where we do not have all the money, possessions, or time to do everything. All right, so that's really why we don't have everybody going to school. Okay, one example of having to make this choice and this trade-off is using the budget constraint. The budget constraint is just showing you all the possible combinations of goods that you can afford given prices and all your income is spent. All right, so basically think of two different things that you can buy, like coffee and scones, and you have, let's say, $10. So what's the most amount of coffee and scones that you can buy? Okay, that's what the budget constraint is trying to show us. It's a great way to show you how much you can afford and illustrate trade-offs. All right, here's an example. Let's say you have a budget of $10, burgers are $2, and bus tickets are 50 cents. So what we're going to do with this budget constraint is illustrate the most amount of burgers you can buy and the most amount of bus tickets you can buy. All right. So here on this one, let's figure out the most amount of burgers. So if each one are $2, all right, and their $10 budget, then all you would have to do is just divide those two numbers and you'll get 5. So that means you have a total of 5 burgers. If you're buying 5 burgers, how many bus tickets can you buy? The answer is 0, because you're spending all of your money on the burgers. You have no money for the bus tickets. Okay? Now, let's look at 4 burgers. If you're buying 4 burgers, how many bus tickets can you get? So for that one, right, you have your $10. We need to figure out how much we're spending on the burgers. If you buy 4 burgers and each one are $2, how much money do you have left over? Well, you spent 8 on the burgers, so therefore you have $2 left over. So how many bus tickets can you buy? You'll take what is left over and then divide it by the price of the bus tickets. So in this case, you should get 4. All right. Let's do the same thing for 3 burgers. All right. So it's the same process. I'm going to show you the exact same thing. It's the same flow as this. All right. So again, we had $10. We bought 3 burgers. Each one are $2. How much money do we have left over? Well, we spent 6 on the burgers, so we have $4 left over. You're going to take what's left over and divide it by the price of the bus tickets. If you did that, your calculator should get 8. Okay. 2 burgers. If you did the same process, you'll find out that you spent $4 on the burgers, so that means you had $6 left over, divided by the 50 cents, and that means you have 12 bus tickets. And if you see a pattern here, you can see that 1 burger leaves you with 16 bus tickets, and if you bought 0 burgers, that means you can buy 20 bus tickets. Okay, so this is how a budget constraint works. This is how you show the most amount of burgers and bus tickets that you can buy. If you were to get a raise, what do you think would happen? Well, this budget would now increase. All right, so now it would be 20. And so theoretically, you could buy more burgers and more bus tickets. What if the cost of a burger, or what is the cost of one burger? This is what we're going to call the opportunity cost. Okay, so the opportunity cost is what you're giving up in order to get it. So look, every time you get a burger, you're not giving up $2. You're actually giving up 4 bus tickets. Okay. So in economics, we like to look at not just money, but what else are you giving up, right? So in this example here, the more burgers you're doing, the less bus tickets you have. So theoretically, one burger does cost you 4 tickets. Okay. We'll talk more about opportunity cost here in a bit. Okay. Let's do another example. But now we have a budget of $100. Meat is $2.50 per pound, and broccoli is $4.25 per pound. All right. Even though they're decimals, and even though the numbers are bigger, the process is the exact same. Okay. You need to find out how much you're spending on one good, find out how much you have left over, and then figure out how much you can buy from there. Okay. So for example, we bought 0 broccoli. That means you have $100. So then you'll divide it by the $2.50 to figure out how much meat that you can buy. Okay. So that should be 40. Okay. Now we have 2 pounds of broccoli. All right. So for that one, we need to figure out, well, if it's $4.25 per pound, and we're buying 2 pounds, that means that cost you $8.50. So how much money do we have left over? We had 100. We need to subtract out the $8.50. So that means we have $91.50 left over, and we'll divide that by the $2.50. And that should be 36.6. Okay. Now we're gonna go the other way, but the process is the same. So for here, we're gonna have 32 pounds of meat. So we bought 32 pounds. Each is $2.50. So that means you're spending $80 on meat. How much do you have left over? You have $20 left over, and then you'll divide this by the price of the broccoli, $4.25, and then that'll give you how much broccoli you're buying, which in this case is 4.71. Alrighty, now we have 10 pounds of broccoli, so now we're going the other way, but it's the same process. So it's 10 pounds. 10 pounds times $4.25 a pound. So that means you're at 42.5. You had $100. We'll subtract that out. That means you have $57.50. We'll divide this by the price of the meat, and that ends up with 23. Alrighty, let's keep this going. So now we're buying 16 pounds of meat. 16 pounds times the price of the meat. So that means we're spending $40. That means we have $60 left over. We'll take that 60 and divide it by the price of the broccoli. And that ends up with 14.12. Okay. And then finally, we're looking at 20 pounds of broccoli. All right. So that means we'll do 20 times the price of the broccoli, which is 85. We have $15 left over. So then we'll take that $15 and divide it by the price of the meat. And that is 6. Okay. All right, so that is how we're going to be solving the budget constraint problems. All right. So that's how the process goes, right? You figure out how much money you spent on something, subtract out that from your budget to figure out how much you have left over, and then take that leftover and divide it by the price of the other good, and that'll give you the total amount that you can buy. Okay. If you have more questions, just please feel free to let me know, and I'll help you out even more. Okay. So next we'll talk about opportunity costs.